Correct?
Radiant Health Collaborative has been a huge journey for me. I used to hear entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, whatever you want to call it, say, you got to wear 7 hats and you got to do all this stuff. And I'd be like, yeah, but you don't, again, it's kind of like menopause. You don't get it till you're in it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
When you're in it, it's like, oh my God, it's a lot of duties to fulfill, but I love it. And I love collaborating. I have a lot of wonderful people in the community that I collaborate with, not only locally, but in other states, because I'm not only licensed in Arizona, but California and Washington as well. And then I collaborate with some providers on the East Coast as well. So I see patients there. And so it's really cool to be able to have that collaborative energy. Although I love my alone time and I love doing things myself, I equally love.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Eric Taylor from BigEAstro, back with another amazing episode of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast, episode 293. Well, today I have a very, very special guest, near and dear to my heart. She is a board-certified nurse practitioner and a menopause specialist. This is Heathar Parisi. Heathar, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Eric. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited. And truth be told, Heathar is not just an expert in her field, but she's an expert friend and someone I know personally. So I can vouch for all the magnificence you guys are going to hear today. So, wow. I mean, right now, everyone seems to be talking about menopause and premenopause. Mm-hmm. So explain to us what actually happens to a woman at this time, and then how do you work to bring solutions in their lives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm glad that you said that. And recently, you've heard probably in the last 5 to 10 years, especially on social media, we have a lot of loud voices finally talking about menopause, like this hidden subject that women have put into the closet for so many years, especially our mothers and grandmothers for sure. But what happens is right around our 30s or so, mid to late 30s, we can start experiencing different types of symptoms that we're not used to, that are not kind of classical PMS symptoms. However, they can include worse PMS. Mm-hmm. And what's happening there is the ovaries are kind of starting to slow down their production of hormones. In particular, the first one that tends to go is progesterone. So we might see more cramping. We might see some mood issues. A lot of women even start having some sleepless nights, So that's the kind of perimenopausal phase. That's the beginning. And then after that, we slowly progress into kind of that middle range of perimenopause where symptoms might increase even more. And that's, again, the ovaries are just kind of starting to plan their retirement. And we're starting to see a whole lot of things happen that most of us are not prepared for. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't. I knew, I had, because I was in women's health, I knew these things were a part of life. But until you really go through it and suffer with those symptoms, you don't have skin in the game. So once you're there and you really get it. But then the full-blown menopause is once you've gone 12 full months without an actual menstrual period. And that's officially the day after that, or the day of that, is when you begin menopause. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. I wasn't aware of that. So, for example, in the pre or during the menopause stage, do you hear sometimes from your clients and different women, and is this common, where women could have pain during intercourse or even dryness, down there in the vaginal area?
Absolutely. I would say probably 30 to 35% of my female patients start with, they call them GSM symptoms. It's genitourinary. So you've got bladder symptoms, you may have libido symptoms, you may have vaginal dryness symptoms, which can definitely affect any kind of sexual intimacy because it hurts, Yeah. Those tissues are used to being saturated with estrogen, and that makes them juicy, and that makes your walls of your, canal juicy and receptive. And when you're not getting that hormone stimulation, in other words, those receptors are not being saturated, what you'll feel is just like, ugh, something feels wrong down there. And it can be very uncomfortable. And a lot of people will seek out help, at that point. You can also have a little, you cough, you sneeze, you might get a little leakage of urine. I
Right.
have some patients that come to me, they're kind of trickling urine all day long, and they're wearing, these little pads that you have to wear
Right.
so they don't destroy their underwear. But we have a lot of solutions for that, a lot of different things. Systemic hormones, we have definitely direct, local tissue hormones. We can actually put the hormone right in that area. And that sometimes is all someone needs to kind of get through that phase until they get into the next phase. And it's always like we're just sort of playing with what's going on. And I approach everybody kind of where they are, where they come to me.
So that's so fascinating. And so I can imagine you have a myriad of different type of women and clients at different stages and ages. And is there, I guess for is there like one major common theme? Could there be depression or mood swings, or, like what would be that one theme that stands out the most that these women are experiencing?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. They don't feel like themselves anymore.
Um,
There's this sense of I'm sort of a shell of myself, and it could be that it's not necessarily could be like that every day, but you might experience these days where it's like, gosh, what is up? Like I just don't. I
mm,
feel like I'm sort of sitting outside myself,
wow.
and you're kind of almost like you're starting to lose your identity in a way. And what I really think that is this time period, if we look at it more esoterically, is an opportunity for transformation. All of that pleaser in you, women, we tend to be pleasers, right?
Yeah.
Throughout, especially our, when we're in our reproductive life and we're looking for a mate and we're having children, we tend to be in that pleaser sort of phase. And as we approach perimenopause and definitely menopause, a lot of that suppressed pleaser crap starts to bubble up to the surface. And it's like, hey, I need to talk about this. I need to process this. And menopause kind of doesn't leave you much of an option to not process it anymore. So I would say like the mood, the change in who the heck am I anymore, that seems to be the prevailing symptom that I see, whether you're in perimenopause, which is that 7 to 10 years
Okay.
before you reach menopause, or these women in menopause. And then I have women who come to me as late as I have few patients that are in their mid to late 60s
Wow.
who kind of missed the boat because of that ridiculous study that was released back in 2001, 2002. That was the Women's Health Initiative study that came out and said, oh my God, skull and crossbones, hormones are terrible. They cause cancer. They cause heart attacks and strokes. And all of these women who are on hormones, we had millions of women on hormones and doctors and nurse practitioners prescribing those. All
Right.
of a sudden, the study comes out, scares the bejesus out of everyone. And so we went from like 18 million women on hormones to like 1 million. And it was really more of the fringe practitioners, the naturopaths, the more integrative healthcare practitioners that were able to leave their hormones on compounded, or leave their patients on compounded hormones. But since then, we've had a plethora of research that's come out proving the efficacy of hormones and how much we really, really need them. And that, you don't have to push through and just manage and feel like crap every day. You actually can feel good, and that's what my kind of program is all about, as I introduce that concept and talk about all the ways. And of course, it's not just hormones. That's a big slice of the pie, but there's a lot more.
Oh no, and I can imagine. And I was thinking in my head, and when you were speaking, it kind of made me laugh and chuckle in a sense. Like you can have a lot of middle-aged women with a serious attitude and a hot temper,
Yeah.
right? Because all that's going on, and then like you said, they would suppress this
Yep.
whole pleaser thing because a mother, a wife, her job never ends. Like I salute you guys. I see all the stuff that you and my wife do. You make, that old statement, right? Turning a house into a home.
Yep.
But it is so deep because that is the backbone of our world, and definitely in this country. But I mean, for all cultures, right? Indigenous cultures all over the world, it's the women that hold everything together.
Yeah,
So it's important for everyone to come around at this time to honor this transition in your life and to help with the health. And so you said something interesting. You mentioned esoteric. So I'm kind of curious. Do you feel that mindfulness and meditation and grounding and earthing and connecting to nature, can those things help with some of the hormonal shift and the menopause stuff that the women are experiencing?
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm,
it's always part of the comprehensive protocol. And I sometimes I'll even say, look, if you're not going to do this part, the stress management part, it's kind of pointless to do the other things
wow.
because cortisol has a very active role in kind of your overall picture of how you're going to manage symptoms. I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
When a woman is suffering with, say, hot flashes, right? Oftentimes, what you're going to see, maybe not always, but you'll see if you look back when a woman has a hot flash, oftentimes she can connect that to something that happened right before that hot flash, right?
Oh,
So, and I did this myself. I looked back and I was like, wait a minute, what just happened right before I ran to put my head in the freezer because I was dripping in sweat? What just happened? Oh, I got frustrated because my son didn't pick up his cup, or because I got this, this delivery didn't arrive on time, or, like some kind of stressor happened.
right,
And just that wee bit of cortisol, you're so sensitive already because the brain is trying to adapt to this new normal, which is not normal for the brain. The brain
right,
is
right.
saturated too with hormone receptors that are like, please, please, we need our hormones. And they're not there. And so the brain's any little thing can throw the brain off. And cortisol is a culprit of like epic proportions. So if you don't control your stress, you're going to have more symptoms, and your symptoms are going to be more intense. So grounding, meditation,
Mm,
whether it's a breathing exercises, a yoga class, whether you're
yeah,
in your home or you're in a group, having community, spending time with your friends, if spending time with your family is comfortable and happy and brings you joy, then spending time with family, everyone doesn't have that, you
no,
know,
no, no, yeah.
stressed out in their family, and maybe they don't need to spend a lot of extra time with them during certain phases of menopause. But anything that brings you joy, and that makes you feel like you're you can take that nice breath and you're in that parasympathetic, that's going to really enhance your ability to manage your stress. Because look, stress is going nowhere, right? It's
Right,
literally,
it's every day, yeah.
oh yeah, so it's there, that's a given. But how do we perceive that stress, and how do we adapt to that stress and process that stress? Are we shoving it down? Guess what, it's going to pop up later, and it's not going to be pretty, right? And that's what I was kind of circling back to what I was saying before.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that is a lot of what menopause is that suppressed energy, stress, emotion that we haven't fully sat with and processed.
Wow, that is so powerful. So I got a couple other questions about that, but I definitely want to get into the fact that you are an amazing Libra sun, Capricorn moon, and rising. And Heather's got a tremendous, we don't want to give all her business out, but she's got a tremendous stellium in Libra in the 10th house. And, knowing you personally, it just makes me smile and laugh because, like, that's how having that Libra midheaven and the Jupiter and other placements as well, and that stellium,
Mhm.
that's how your soul shows up in public, and it is like there's this Venusian energy about you, right? Because Libras are great listeners. They're about peace and harmony. They're very charming and pleasant, and that's how you come off in public, right? But I know the other side of the Capricorn moon and Capricorn rising, and just that work ethic that you have. And so, share with the audience, who is 10-year-old Heather, and what did she dream about growing up? And could she have ever imagined all this, wife, mother of three, her own business and all these medical gifts.
Yeah.
What was a young Heather thinking about?
Well, it's interesting because part of my toolbox is I happen to hold a 2-year certificate as a clinical herbalist, right? So when I was a kiddo in my single digits and maybe, around 10, I was discovering plants and flowers. And my mom, I had a really young mother, so we traveled a lot. We had a VW bus, the white van of the 70s.
Yeah.
And we would travel across country because I lived in the South, but then we lived in California. So we did a lot of these cross country trips, and we would stop and we would literally we'd get out, we go into the forest, we would lay in the meadows. I mean, I just felt so, wonderful. And, I was exposed to all this really cool nature.
Wow.
And the other thing that I had when we lived in Memphis is I would go to this health food store that was right around the corner from my house. And I would go in there and I would just look up at all the herbs that were in the glass jars with just utter amazement. And it was like magic for me.
Wow.
So I think there were a lot of seeds planted during that, that really impressionable time in my youth. And then circling back, I found an herb shop in Arizona. And I started visiting that store, and it was just like it all came back to me. And I think that's where my herbalism, lineage started. And then I thought I have to do this, because when I moved to Arizona, a lot of the plants, when I looked around, I thought I just didn't appreciate them. I thought, gosh, everything looks dead.
Right.
Everything's so dry and gross. And then when I went through this herbal program, I couldn't have been more wrong or further from the truth.
There's so much here, right? Yeah.
And the most resilient plants on the planet, because we live in a desert. We oftentimes don't have rain, as you very well know. These beautiful plants are so amazing. They hold water. They are so resilient against this hot sun and all of this crazy weather that we have. Right. And so our plants are really kind of more spectacular than most plants around the whole planet, because they are so cool. And they are absolute medicine for women, for men, for children. We have great selection of plants here. And so I like to utilize a lot of herbs in my protocols for women. It's just it goes along with the hormones, because we want to check every box. You need that kind of fundamental foundational health. So a lot of these plants are really rich in minerals and electrolytes. We want to make sure that people are hydrated. And so I do a combination of nutraceuticals, actually herbal teas, tinctures, all of those sort of things. Again, just depends on the person. But those foundational pieces are really, really important. But back to Heather, I think, to answer your question, that's where the 10-year-old was sparked. And in terms of like personal life, yes, always knew I was going to be a mother. Like, had that princess in my mind. Marriage, 2 children, but I got 3, so I got a bonus, and I got a boy, so I was really happy about that.
Yeah.
So things have worked out very well for me.
That is so awesome. So, okay, I have to kind of get back to my questions around the hormones. But before that, you had mentioned a couple of things, and it made me think of, you also have Mars on the ascendant in Capricorn. And, I know you love hiking and exploring in nature, but Mars in Capricorn, that's the CEO boss energy. And share with everybody sort of, that journey, because I know you have, worked in other places or in other fields, but in some way, did you always know you were going to pretty much have your own business and your own practice?
I always knew I wanted to be collaborative.
Okay.
And doing it all myself now, as this, having this clinic that I'm running.
And that's Radiant Health Collaborative, correct?
Radiant Health Collaborative has been a huge journey for me. I used to hear entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, whatever you want to call it, say, you got to wear 7 hats and you got to do all this stuff. And I'd be like, but you don't, again, it's kind of like menopause. You don't get it till you're in it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
When you're in it, it's like, oh my God, it's a lot of duties to fulfill, but I love it. And
Yeah.
I love collaborating. I have a lot of wonderful people in the community that I collaborate with, not only locally, but in other states, because I'm not only licensed in Arizona, but California and Washington as well. And then I collaborate with some providers on the East Coast as well. So I see patients there. And so it's really cool to be able to have that collaborative energy. Although I love my alone time and I love doing things myself, I equally love working with people,
So wait, that's interesting that you said that. So does that mean you can prescribe medicines for, let's say, women that may reach out to you in California or Ohio or New York, New Jersey, wherever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, primarily in the states that I'm licensed, and
Okay.
then in the states that I collaborate in.
Okay.
So, and I'm working on more and more licensures and collaborations with different people, because we'll work together. Like sometimes I'll have people that come to me, women that not only are going through menopause, but maybe they have autoimmune
Oh,
diseases,
yeah.
autoimmune diseases. And although I can treat those, I actually prefer to work with people who are kind of dedicated just to autoimmune, because specializing is really important. Hormones are huge, and we do cover a lot of ground with hormones. But when we're looking at stealth infections and or really bad mold toxicity or anything like, heavy metals, unfortunately, this stuff is ubiquitous in our environment. And if your genetics are not exactly, the right, well, that's not necessarily the right way. They're just either variated, right? I mean, I'm a poster child for that. So I have a lot of understanding around that. But sometimes people don't have the greatest detoxification genetics, and maybe they've had a lot of trauma or they've had a lot of stress in their life. And what you can see is that they don't do so well detoxifying certain things, or they've been exposed, maybe even unknowingly. I don't spray chemicals, pesticides, herbicides in my yard, but I can't control what the neighbor on this side or
Right,
that
and
side
that's
does.
close enough that it can affect you, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, look at our food supply. I mean, I think things are about to change. I'm really,
I hope so.
hopeful,
Yeah.
with the upcoming potential of that. But for right now, what I can tell you is you'd be very careful what you're eating, and look at labels, and
Yes.
preferably eat things that are not in boxes or containers that you have to read labels. We want our fresh things. Go to farmers markets, buy locally.
It's the best. The farmers markets are the best. You're right.
And not everybody can have, an organic certification, but talk to that farmer. What do you put? How do you handle pests? Do you put anything on these plants? And
Right. Yeah. How do you grow? What's your soil like? Yeah. You're right. That's so powerful. So wait. So do you? Okay. Oh, my brain's just going crazy because there's so much here. So first off, is it important for women to get the natural vitamin D sunlight, and also because I've heard this from many practitioners, especially traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, for women to stop drinking ice cold water?
I mean, I always recommend room temp water too.
Okay.
I get it. I know that sometimes you get almost like a hankering. You want just a cold sip of water, and I think that's okay. But for the most part, if you can have your beverages room temperature, that's ideal.
Okay.
And what was your other question?
Well, for women to,
vitamin D and sun exposure.
Yeah, the sunlight. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's like circadian medicine.
Rhythm, yeah.
And that's always a part of my protocol too. Ideally, you want to get up, close to the sunrise, because you want that sun at a certain pitch.
Yes.
And when you go out, not staring necessarily right at
gazing, just the sun gazing. Yeah.
Yeah, close by, and really waking up those receptors in your eyes that tell the brain, okay, let's shush off the melatonin and ramp up the serotonin so we feel good today. There really is something to that. It's not just a hypothesis like maybe this occurs. No, there's hard science.
Oh, hard science. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure that this is a real thing. And then in terms of vitamin,
and sun gazing at sunset as well, correct?
oh yeah, I would say that is my most favorite thing to do, especially with our beautiful sunsets here. I mean,
Oh,
getting out there, and sometimes I'll even squint a little bit just so I can really see those red rays. I love that. I absolutely
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
And that also sets us up for sleep at night, right? That shuts down the cortisol, kind of starts ramping down everything, and starts that initiative for our melatonin, which will happen a couple of hours later after sunset. So yeah,
Right.
I'm into circadian medicine for sure.
Wow, no, that's awesome. So tell the audience how you help men and women with
Mhm.
metabolic issues, but also with the autoimmune. Is everything pretty much focused on testing the blood to start off? Is that your go-to first?
Good question. So with women, well, a couple things there.
Okay.
Number one, I primarily have been treating perimenopause and menopausal women. Just recently, in the last year and a half or so, I got certified in andropause medicine. So that's specific to
Oh, wow.
men.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 50% of men will start to have similar symptoms to menopause in a way. So
Hmm.
they start losing their ability to make testosterone in the testicles. And
Right.
so I'll get men, they're fatigued, they're tired, they're cranky, and they may have libido issues. And
Hmm.
that generally is the number one thing that they'll come with. But
Right.
then when we start questioning further, you're going to see that, yeah, those are also kind of part of the picture, those other symptoms. But in terms of women, it depends on the woman, but for the most part, when women come to me, especially let's say she's 55, she hasn't had a period in 4 years, I know she's in menopause. I know her hormones are low. So I don't necessarily have to test those hormones as a baseline. I can, and depending on the situation, I will. What I do test is a lot of labs looking at inflammatory markers,
Mm.
metabolic markers, and I want to know what's going on at that baseline. And then once we've got you established and you're feeling more like yourself again, and you're happy, and you're like all your symptoms for the most part have pretty much gone away, that's when I institute what I call the real testing. So I'm looking at a 24-hour urine.
Okay.
Blood is literally 1 second of the day. It's, if that, I mean, it's a tenth of a second, right? When they
Right.
pull
Right. Right.
blood out. When you look at a 24-hour urine, I'm looking at 24 hours worth of data. So even in menopause, we are still very cyclical beings. So I want to know on the average of 24 hours, what does your hormone profile look like? And I'm going to look
Sort of
at that.
the ups and downs, right?
Well, yes, but averaged out, because
Right. Right.
I have particular parameters that I want to make sure that my ladies are in so that they have the protection for their bones, for their brain, for their bladder, and your genitourinary
Right.
system, like we talked about, our hearts, our arteries, our veins. Hormones
Right.
protect all of these things, but they need to be within a specific range in order to offer those protections. If you're too low, you may not quite have enough to afford those protections. But if you have too much, that may be a detoxification issue. So we have to tweak that. I will say the latter there rarely happens because I don't dose
Okay.
high by any means. I kind of, again, start low and slow, and then I ramp up depending on what the person needs. And oftentimes I will test, and we'll tweak and add more. So it really depends. That's why it's very precision medicine. It's very personalized, because how this lady metabolizes hormones next to me here is one thing, and then this lady over here, it's a completely different picture. So the one size fits all, the FDA, they have three choices of the
Right.
patch. Not that I'm against that, but it's just that it really limits what we can do. Whereas what I do is I have everything on the menu. Do we want a patch? I like to use hormones and organic oils. And I use a pharmacy that is specific to that. And a lot of people really resonate with that. They
Right.
don't
Right.
want all these other chemicals and adhesives. So mine, specifically, well, not mine, but some of the pharmacies that I use, they'll use a base of organic jojoba oil, and then they put the
Ah.
hormones within that, and yeah, and so that's how you apply the hormone. That's a transdermal
Cool. Okay.
application. Also, we have creams that are sort of like a phyto base, and so we can use that. It just depends on the person. Some people are like, yeah, give me the oil. Some people are like, no, it's too messy. I want the cream. So again, precision,
Wow,
personalization, that sort of thing.
that's really fascinating, and there's so much, I guess, detail to the nuances of each woman and each person. And so, with that, what if someone comes to you and, like you said kind of before, like they kind of missed the boat or they suffered through pre and menopause? And let's say she's 60 to 65 now, but she still doesn't feel good. Can you
Mhm.
Is there like a post menopausal program or a way to kind of still recalibrate a woman that may be more senior? Okay.
There is, yeah. So obviously, you can imagine if
Hmm.
this woman is, say, 65, it's not going to be
Right.
the same as somebody who's 55, right? You're not going to get quite
Okay.
the same benefits.
Yeah.
But, and I'll tell you why. Because let's say you went into menopause at 54, 55, and you come to me at 65. You've had 10 years of damage, your arteries, potentially your brain, again, the vaginal tissues, the bladder. Those things are a
Okay.
lot easier to fix downstairs, or a lot easier to fix than as we move up. Those become a little bit more challenging. However, having said that, what I'll do with that person looks a little bit different. And I have some blog posts on this specifically about checking the cardiovascular system. So if somebody is a 60 through perimenopause, menopause, the actual transition into menopause, and now they are, and I'm glad you used that term because you're correct. It is called post-menopause. One day post-menopause, or after that last 12 months, that's technically post-menopausal. So that lady comes to me. One of the things I'm going to look at is her cardiovascular health. And
Oh, okay.
yeah. And so what I do is it's called a CCTA. So you go to an imaging center, they take some pictures of your heart. And then I use a company called Clearly, and I'm on their website. So sometimes even people will call me to look at these testing, because it looks like a cockpit. I mean, it's the most beautiful pictures, but it's all the insides of your arteries and your vessels, the tree of your heart. And we
Wow.
can see, do you have any plaques? Because those plaques are really important to identify. Are they hard plaques? Are they soft plaques? Before
Mm.
Clearly, there was no way to know that, because the hard plaques are kind of more, static. They're there. They're kind of, they've made their home there. They're probably not leaving. But the soft plaques are a whole other story. We want to make sure that there aren't any soft plaques, because if there's soft plaques, those are more likely to dislodge. So that I want to that's why I'll do that testing with a woman who's a little bit older. As
Right.
long as she's okay and looks pretty good with the Clearly test, then I can go ahead and give her hormones. And what I see there's benefits with halting osteoporosis.
Oh,
That's a
yes,
huge
that's a huge thing. Okay. Wow.
and even reversing it. And I have collaborations with other parts of our community that help me with the osteoporosis and even osteopenia piece, as well as the hormones. And then also, when we look at brain health, a lot of women will come to me with in particular, the women in their 60s and 50s, but they'll come to me like, hey, I just walked into a room and dang, I can't remember why I walked in
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Or they're having a conversation and they're like, and so I was going to the what's that place, where there's groceries? It's called
Right. Right.
and I'm like, store. Yeah, store. That's it.
Well,
It's
okay. So,
word
wait.
finding,
Okay.
word
So
finding issues. Yes, and
no.
yeah, I mean, listen, if you're under severe stress, anyone can go,
No,
have
of course.
moments
But
like that. But if you're doing it consistently, then we know that your brain is being affected. And so I have seen some really good turnaround from using these transdermal hormones for brain health, because what happens is, with this kind of detachment from hormones for
right.
that
Right.
time, a decade or so, you start losing the brain. I mean, literally, Lisa Mosconi, she's a PhD researcher. I highly recommend, if anybody's interested in brain health, to look her up, because this woman is the bomb. She's done research, really recent research, looking at women who, through the menopause transition, we actually see a loss of brain matter. The brain shrinks in women.
Okay,
And so
wait. Stop right there because that's what I've been like dying to ask you this. So,
that's it.
okay, so, oh my God, like so much. So, ginkgo biloba. There's been a lot of recent studies and studies years ago, but that it can really help with the brain. But then,
Circulation. Yep.
but what is also your thoughts about the CBD and THC? Because we're getting into a place where you're saying the lack of proper hormones going through menopause can create long-term effects or damage, autoimmune, or even things with mental stuff. And is that what also can sometimes take us into dementia or
Yes.
Alzheimer's?
So out of every 3 diagnoses made for Alzheimer's, 2 of those are made in women. Same with osteoporosis.
Yeah.
2 of every 3 diagnoses are made in women. So it's more than a correlation. It's highly likely that it is primary causation. So again, I'm happy to incorporate herbs. I want to do everything. I'm going to throw everything in there. The ginkgo biloba is great for circulation in the brain, and it helps light things up. But you cannot supplement a hormone other than the hormone itself, the bioidentical hormone itself. No herb is comparable. All herbs are compatible, but nothing will take the place of the hormone.
So if your hormones get out of whack for 10 years, you're saying the damage is accumulating, right? Yeah. And this can affect not just the brain, but also the arteries in the heart?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
So if you look at also statistics, not that I want to be a walking book of statistics, but it matters. Objective data matters. But if we look at what is the #1 cause of death in women? Cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease, whether it's a stroke or a heart attack.
Wow.
That is directly correlated with a lack of estrogen. Directly.
But let me get this right, because I think I kind of know a couple of things about the ladies, but isn't there an importance? And what you do is that you are balancing, because the women need the estrogen, progesterone, and the testosterone, correct?
Yes. Now, some people might disagree with me on the testosterone, but I really do think it's an integral part of a protocol.
That's what all the latest research is showing, right? That testosterone is very important.
Yeah. And also, I think I will say this. Some women who are approaching menopause or in menopause tend to make a little bit more testosterone than maybe their neighbor. So oftentimes I'll take a look and I'll test someone, and maybe their estrogen is on empty, but they have a little bit of testosterone. So we do have sometimes workaround. So as we go into menopause, we still do make hormones. We do make sex hormones. Women are making estrogen and testosterone and a teeny bit of progesterone in their fat cells and their adrenal glands. So we do have some. It's not like we have zero, although sometimes lab tests will kind of say that it's zero. There is a little bit. There's it's a sprinkle as opposed to like a full gallon, like we used to have. Right. And so things dramatically change. And the issue with considering hormones or not considering hormones or only doing herbs, of course, it's a very personal choice.
Right.
But what I will tell you, just from a clinical perspective, is that what I see is women want to tough through it, or they want to nutrition and herb through it as best they can. And some of them come out kind of okay. But a lot of times I have people coming to me and they're like, oh, you know what? The wheels are falling off, and they're falling off fast. Wow. So like once things start happening, it becomes kind of like the perfect storm. And so, those things become a little bit harder to reverse. Again, not impossible to make some improvements, but like I said about that, the lady who's 65, she's not necessarily going to see the benefits that someone who started. Even I have a lot of women starting in their mid 40s because they're still cycling, they're still having periods, but they're getting that bumpy kind of bumpy ride. Their cycles may be shorter. Maybe they used to be 28 days. Now they're 20 days. You'll have a few
Wow.
of those. Then you won't have a period for 3 months, or you start having hot flashes at night and you can't sleep. So all
Right.
these accumulation of symptoms start happening in perimenopause, and they'll come to me then, and we'll just start something as simple as like progesterone, because I'll tell you, this is kind of a cool thing that you might appreciate. The first hormone that goes is progesterone, and that is specifically because in order for our bodies to make progesterone, we have to ovulate. And one of the telltale signs of perimenopause is you start skipping ovulation. Maybe not every month or every cycle, but you'll have maybe every third cycle you don't ovulate for that month. Well, guess what happens? There's no progesterone that month. So that means
Wow.
that next period, maybe more PMS. That next period, maybe you're bleeding heavier. That next period, maybe you don't even have a next period, that you skip that next month. So all of these sequelae or symptoms start to happen from this one episode of not ovulating. It's like a domino effect.
Wow.
So if we just add in a little bit of transdermal progesterone and a little, maybe some supplements, some herbs, that kind of thing, we'll often see a huge turnaround. People are sleeping better.
Yeah.
They're not having these terrible cramps. They're not flooding. I've had people come to me and, oh my gosh, I bled through my pants at work. I'm sitting,
Oh,
got blood underneath me. So it's like we really do. I just want to impart some hope. We really do have a lot of great tools that we can help people through this that work, and they're amazing, and they make people's lives so much better. And you have the quality of life is really valuable, right?
no, it's everything. So, honey, now, have you seen or have you read any research? Because I know with the CBD and THC, it can help with inflammation in the brain and help with dementia, Alzheimer's.
Mm.
But are there any connections with THC or CBD to a woman's hormones for menopause or pre or post menopause?
I do find a lot of people turning to that. I do think I like CBD. I will incorporate that depending on the inflammatory picture of the person.
Okay.
I do like that. I not so much with the THC. I find that the research on that is really scattered. It's kind of fractured, because a lot of times you'll see like a sedation effect, which is great for going to sleep. But the problem is when you look at studies in terms of the quality of sleep, it's not so great. Like maybe the deep sleep is not as high quality as it could be. And
Okay.
so I'm not against it. I'm not for it. It's just not something I really incorporate into my protocols.
Okay.
CBD, yes, but not so much THC. Yeah.
Okay. So now this is fascinating for me. So, what is it or what's going on in a woman that may bring on extremely early premenopause? Have you seen this of some women
Mhm.
in their 30s? I
Yes.
mean, I
Yep.
figured so because right now, right? Hopefully, we're talking about this. Hopefully, things get better. But with the fluoride, with the chemicals in the food,
Mhm.
with the chemtrails, with all the toxins, there's got to be so much that can affect, I'm sure, both genders, but I think of women and their hormones.
Mhm.
So, is that like what is it that's causing it for the women in their early 30s that you may see?
Well, exactly what you just said, and you're right. It is women, but it's also men. And
Yeah.
because think about this, 30 years ago, you didn't hear about men in their 30s having low testosterone.
No, it's
Now, maybe
crazy.
it's not commonplace, but it's not something that's totally unusual anymore.
No, it happens a lot. You hear about these young, yeah, and
Mhm.
it's all the processed foods and
Yeah, and we are being marketed these things, and
oh,
so
of course, yeah, no, no,
yeah,
it's
so I
we're in a war. I mean,
yeah. So
so
but I do think it's an accumulation of, poor food choices, again, being marketed that garbage, but also trauma, stress,
yeah,
other types of low level, like that kind of burning inferno, smoldering infection, whether, again, it could be something like you're in a house that has mold toxicity. You don't know, and your genetic makeup does not metabolize that stuff well. And you might be having brain fog. You might have a leptin issue. So you're gaining weight and you don't know why you're gaining weight, and you're not then you stop eating, or you really minimize your calories, and you're getting big as the house that you're in. And that's a leptin issue. So those can be things that are underlying that maybe we're not aware of, these ubiquitous chemicals in our environment that are really the culprit for pushing people into an early perimenopause, or men into an earlier andropause, it's astounding to me. I mean, you cannot argue with the environment, what's going on. You really can't. And my suggestion to a lot of people who are in that situation, or trying to prevent that situation, because what I do recognize is, so because this is being talked about so much, I'm meeting young women in their 30s, like early 30s, that have no problems, but they're coming to me going, what can I do now
to prevent
this?
Well, no, I'm sure, because the younger generation, they're very proactive.
Very proactive. So I'm hopeful. The situation that we're talking about with these people like this, my heart just hurts for them, because they don't know what's going on. It makes no sense. It doesn't seem like it's on any sort of calendar that we're used to, but it is happening. But I do have hope for this, these millennials coming into this, because they ask questions, they want to know, and they're proactive, a lot of them. And I'm happy to educate those people too. Then, we have a lot of women that have PCOS. So that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. So they're getting all these kind of like cysty things on their ovaries, and their testosterone, their androgens are really jacked up. Their estrogen is not being detoxified properly. And there's a lot of symptoms that go along with that, but that can also push us potentially into an earlier menopause. So I think anything that is a real big stressor on the body, emotional, physical, in combination together, that is highly likely a culprit for earlier menopause.
So, okay, right now, until 2044, we have Pluto in Aquarius. And this is going to be a huge shift for the collective in terms of, advancements in medicine, doing things around stem cells and plasma. And so I wanted to ask you, are there new studies or new technologies that are being developed, or that you're hearing about, or could potentially be integrated to not fast track, but to, help with these transitions that a woman goes through from pre to menopause to post on the journey, besides the hormones, or making the hormones even easier to work with? What are you sensing or hearing about on the horizon?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll go from kind of one extreme to the other. So the really real big extreme, I recently was at a lecture and I heard about this, that they're considering doing like stem cell injections into ovaries, like trying to wake up the ovaries to start producing hormones again. I think we're probably a long ways off from that at this point, but hey, who knows? I think that would be super cool. Or even transplant. I've even heard that topic, like, oh, maybe we transplant some new ovaries, some young ovaries that they grow in a lab into
ovary transplant. That's possible. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't know if it's possible today, but it's being discussed. I'll put it that way. But I think to kind of swing to the other side of the pendulum, that I think is more proactive and it's more within our reach, and that is to really look, like we were talking about with the millennials, or even in the perimenopause, so your 30s to 40s, if you can, really increase your mitochondrial health, right? So circadian medicine, that's one way to do it. There's a lot of inexpensive, free ways to do this. Getting enough sleep at night, going to bed, don't stay up on a device until 1 o'clock in the morning. Really making sure you're asleep before 11. I mean, preferably before 10:30, but I say 11 because it's more reasonable.
Research is showing, right? We should get our best sleep between 10 and 6.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because we go through those sleep cycles, and that's the better way to do it.
Yeah.
But even if you can do 11 and getting 8 hours of sleep, yes, there are people that say they're fine on 5 or 6. I don't know if I believe that. Maybe they don't
No,
feel it. They don't have any, they're not symptomatic,
they're
but I
not
think
fine internally with their
no, I think
organs.
at a deeper
No.
level they're doing damage. But
Yeah.
to each their own. But if you're
Yeah.
asking me, I think circadian rhythm medicine, getting enough sleep, eating a good diet, staying hydrated, taking herbs, all those things, happiness, all the kind of blue zone stuff, things that we can do. And then also, as we get older, there are therapies like NAD. You can get an NAD IV that can kind of boost your mitochondria for a while. You
Right.
can use red light. I use a red light sauna every single day. I sweat, I detoxify, even in the desert. I want to get in there. I want to be very purposeful about
Right.
sweating out all the crap that I'm accumulating every single day. So these little kind of biohacks that I use, and then
Super important.
that I often prescribe as, put together within the protocol for patients. It's really important, and consistency with that, not doing it once in a while, but like being very consistent with whatever resonates with you. I've got, again, this big toolbox of things that people can do, but really helping people to establish some kind of fundamental foundational care is the key, I think, to success, whether you are trying to prevent things from going to, poorly as you go into menopause, or if you're stuck right in the middle of it. I'm going to give you similar things because it's going to help you no matter what stage you're at.
Wow. Okay. I have a couple more questions, but before we get to those, please share your website and your socials so people can reach with you, because you
Yeah.
work with clients all over the world, correct?
Yes. Sometimes what I'll do is, if all else fails, you can come to Arizona. You can see me here,
Right.
and then we can work out a prescription. I can collaborate with other providers.
Right.
I can coach. So there's all sorts of ways. I offer a free discovery call. But to answer your question, the website is www.rhcollaborative, all one word, .com. Yeah. And on there, you'll see more about me. You'll see more about my protocols, a link to a discovery call. And then a really cool thing that I have going on, and you'll see this on my socials, on my website as well, is I'm doing a masterclass for a summit that's coming up next month.
Okay.
So that's going to be pretty awesome.
Okay. Well, tell them your socials so people could
Oh, social.
join that. And
I think this is terrible because I am not super proactive. I'm evolving. I'm almost there.
you
But
got it.
I think it's Heather H. And so remember, Heather is not spelled ER. It's HEATHAR.Parisi.FNP, I believe, is the Instagram.
Okay.
And same for, it's Heathar, like Heathar Parisi, FNP on Facebook. And soon to be on YouTube, because I'm doing a free Minnow challenge, and that'll be after the masterclass.
I
So
think you definitely should be on YouTube, my friend. That'll be great.
that'll
That
be fun.
that is a lot of fun. So, okay, that is really important. So, this is the thing that I was thinking about. How, on the negative side, how can the lack of sleep, drugs, cigarettes, and alcohol
Mhm.
affect a woman pre or menopause itself? How can those adverse effects, make things worse for a woman and her hormones?
I love that you asked this question because it's really, really important for overall health and specific to hormones. Okay, when we look at our liver, that's our master detoxifier, right? So when we drink alcohol, for example, the body sees that as a poison. It's a neurotoxin to the
Yeah.
brain. And this is not a thing. I'm not rah, rah, rah. You can't ever drink, right?
Right.
We've shared a glass of wine before together.
Yeah.
Right, Eric? Okay. So not domestic, definitely from Europe, but regardless.
A good one.
So often, yeah, not doing this regularly, I think, is number one. But if
Right.
you are going to drink, understanding that if you're taking hormones, or even if you're producing your own endogenous hormones, you're still, having a menstrual cycle every month, your liver has to prioritize detoxification. Guess who wins when we're drinking alcohol or taking drugs? Those things, because the body wants that out first. So what happens is the glyphosate, the pesticides, the hormones, all the things that the liver beautifully breaks down has to then be shoved to the side because it's got to deal with the poisons first. And that it's when it
Wow.
sees alcohol products that are broken down, it's going to go through that procedure first. Also, with any kind of drugs, it's going to break those down first. So then we kind of get this backup. And so that could lead potentially to feeling puffy, water retention, maybe worse. Whether if you're still cycling, it might be a worse period that month. If you're in menopause, maybe you have a few extra hot flashes. We find that caffeine, alcohol can sometimes trigger those things. So you just kind of see where you are. If you notice there's a correlation, every time I have a glass of red wine, I don't sleep at all that night, then maybe don't do that.
Right.
That's not the best thing for you.
Now, like I used to drink coffee and now I've stopped and try to just do the teas, but can caffeine mess you up more during or during menopause?
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's just this whole sort of detoxification process that the body goes through. And we're if you're in those kind of hormonally vulnerable stages, and we're asking the body also, hey, you got to break down all this other stuff too. It's more of a burden. And so you might be more sensitive to caffeine. I notice a lot of women when they're in menopause, they say, I just can't drink that coffee anymore, but I can drink green tea and that's still caffeinated.
Yeah.
More balanced, with the L-theanine, you get sort of a calming effect balanced with the caffeine. And the caffeine is not going to be it's 30 grams for a caffeine cup of green tea versus say 100 grams for a cup of coffee. So if it's not doing well, or you're really watching, hey, there's some symptoms that are going along with this, then take a break, assess it, test it. And if you notice that you feel better, then I would say, I don't like the ever, never, never, you can't ever have it again kind of attitude. Right. And I would never tell anyone to do that, but just shelving it for a while and just see how you feel and then managing it from there.
Well, that's really helpful. So as we get ready to wind down, one last question, and then, I'll have you kind of close out with a special, just a message for everybody and stuff. But back to the Pluto Aquarius, because I think one thing that is very important, right? Pluto is transmutation, transformation, but it deals with virus and toxins. And right now it's getting popular, but it's also very necessary with all these environmental and food poisons and toxins we get, and fluoride and chemtrails. How important do you see, just in general and around the menopause periods for women, is doing a fast or a parasite cleanse?
Great. Yeah. So something I do with my patients is I use a company called Prolon. It's a 5-day fast. And Walter Longo, he's a researcher. He's an Italian man that he's a professor at USC. Okay. He's done a lot of research with this Prolon fast. So part of my practice is also like really up-leveling people for their longevity and their health span. Because what I find is women come to me, maybe they're highly symptomatic. They want to get out of this raging hell of menopause. And we do that. And then they're like, okay, what's next? And I say, okay, you want to level up? And they're like, yeah. So then we start doing all this kind of like health span stuff. And one of the things I utilize is the Prolon 5-day fast. So we'll test some biomarkers as a baseline. We'll see where you are inflammatory wise and that kind of thing, metabolic wise, which we didn't even get into that. Maybe we have to have a part 2. I don't know. That's a whole other thing, but that's another specialty of mine. Anyway, so with the 5-day fast, what we'll notice is, number one, they're probably going to lose a little bit of weight. They're going to feel brighter, clearer coming out of that. And it's not starvation. It's not like no food for 5 days. It's just a limited amount of calories, right? Okay. And then I also have them do something called senolytics during that 5-day fast. So that is encouraging even more autophagy. So that's that, after we've been on the planet 4, 5, 6 decades, we start accumulating a lot of cells that are no longer really serving us that well. They're just sort of hanging around, maybe causing a little bit of inflammation. We want those guys out. We don't need them. We need room for fresh, healthy cells.
Yeah.
So what this 5-day fast does, along with these senolytics, is it helps us up level our autophagy. So when we get to the end of that, I'll test them a couple of weeks later, and lo and behold, those biomarkers look beautiful. So that's one of the things I really recommend people do is the fasting. So I'm right there with you for that. And that can look like different things. That's just what I happen to utilize
Right.
myself and in my own practice.
But do you find that, doing even, I don't consider them necessarily the same, but in terms of like doing a parasite cleanse,
Yeah.
Which may be a little bit more intense than a fast,
Mm-hmm.
or do you feel that the fasting could help get out the parasites as well?
I do, because like I said, I think you're cleaning house first. Parasite cleanse, I think you really should be prepared for. And so there's some foundational work like fasting, like autophagy.
To do that first. Okay.
Yeah. So I like to layer things because those parasite cleanses can be somewhat intense for some people, and they can wind up worse than they were, or just not knowing how to manage those symptoms. So it's kind of a layering effect. First things first. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you would definitely have to come back on live. We'll have to set something up in the spring and get more into this and to all the metabolic work. But I want you to share your website again, and then just share like a little something of really letting women know that they're not alone, and you're just a click or a phone call away to reach out, because it could just be simple things that could really make a tremendous change in their everyday life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my website is rhcollaborative, all one word.com. And there's, again, tons of information about me and what I do on there. I click for a free discovery call. It's I think 20, 25 minutes we spend together and see if we're kind of a good match. And I tell you I do programs and that sort of thing. But in terms of a message of hope, I will say, as a postmenopausal woman, I experienced about 3 weeks of hot flashes and hell and all the other terrible things that went through it. And that really changed my interpretation of what menopause was. And so I just want to let you know, no matter what stage you're in, whether you're 40, whether you're 70, there's some tool that can help you. And really, suffering is optional. So I want to let you know that I'm here. I'm available. There are a lot of providers that are available. If I can't treat you for whatever reason, I'm happy to try to help and facilitate another provider. So be well, stay healthy, keep watching Eric because he's super high vibe, and I'm excited to see you all next time. And come see me on my summits. I have 2. You're going to put those in the show notes, but I have a masterclass that I'm presenting on. It's called From Skinny Jeans to Sweatpants. It's all about the metabolic metabolism and menopause. That one's going to be February 24th.
Okay, February
24th. It's a 7-day summit. It's one of the largest menopause summits ever put on. I am like shoulder to shoulder with some of the coolest big speakers.
I'm so excited for you. That's going to be awesome.
Yep. And then I was just invited to another menopause summit that I will give you the information for too. That's going to be coming, I think, at the end of the spring, probably sometime around late April. So you can see me there. Just come and watch it. Try to learn from different people. But in between, their sandwich in the middle is I'm doing that 5-week Meno challenge. And that is being set up as we speak. My coach and my little team and I are putting together this menopause challenge, but the URL is menochallenge.com. It's not up and running just yet. We're still connecting the landing page and all that, but that'll be probably around the first week of March.
Wow. Okay. All right.
What's going on?
Gotta stay connected to Heathar Parisi. That is really awesome. Oh my gosh. So this has been so amazing, my friend. You guys, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow this woman, but explore her website. You can see she's a wealth of knowledge, but she also has a heart of gold. This woman, I'm going to say real quick before we get off this episode, because she's got to run, but she was there when my twins were born and my poor wife was like bleeding out like crazy. She was there.
I was in the room.
In the room
Yeah.
to help and hold the twins and be there. And I didn't even get to mention, but this is just real quick. While I was in coma for 40 days, I, in the spirit realm, saw her and we spoke. And when you were at I think a Joe Dispenza retreat, and you were sending me healing energy with someone.
I was.
And we can, and I just, this is my spiritual sister. So thank you, my friend. This has been so much fun. And thank you guys for watching episode 293 of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast with the amazing Heathar Parisi. Thank you, my friend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.